what I find is so cool about it is it pulls us out of two different things that we can fall into as real estate professionals. One is, of course, being so focused on our markets, which we need to be. That is truly our area of mastery. But we need to sometimes really kind of look at things a little more globally because our clients are looking that way. Many of our clients don't just have their lives centered around, Massachusetts, parts of, New Hampshire and Rhode Island and everything else. They're really not just locally or regionally based. They're people who have holdings of all kinds all over the world.
Welcome to another episode of Real Tea. Thanks, Colleen, for being here once again.
Thank you.
We should do outfit changes or something.
We really should. I know. We need to employ hair and makeup people. I've never been good at that kind of thing.
Oh my gosh. I'll just do your hair and makeup next time and do something hilarious. I got these butterfly clips recently for my daughter. People love them, like 90s babies. They're like, yeah.
We should let our kids prep us for this.
Yes,
is what we should
that would
do.
Be hilarious.
That could be clownish.
So today we are going to touch briefly on the mid-year luxury outlook that Sotheby's International Realty produces. It's a really interesting report, but I think what we want to touch on and what we talked about is these reports are fantastic, but a lot of times it's kind of like, how do we use them? Or like, what is the benefit to them? Because obviously it's covering much larger than like these specific markets that people are operating in, a much larger geographical area. So I would love you to just break down like what's the report, maybe give us like the high level. We're not here to break down the whole report, the high level of like what the report, where we stand at this point in the year. And then what are your recommendations on how agents use this?
I love it. Well, I am so grateful to Sotheby's International Realty, not only for the gift of the brand, which is how we talk about it, and the network itself, but also the fact that they're able to put these kinds of things together. I mean, if it were on our team to do this kind of level of research and content creation from a national and international perspective, it just couldn't happen, right? So the mid-year luxury report, and they do this report now twice a year, it used to be just once a year, which is why I bring that up. What it really takes a look at is consumer behavior on a global level. And so they're looking at different kinds of trends. It might be shifting consumer behavior on the whole in luxury buying, which could incorporate a lot of different high price tag consumer goods. But it also is looking at things like, what are the changing economic situations that we're in? Another example of what they took a look at on this particular one was what happens when an area hits a natural weather or other kind of crisis that happens. So they took a look at what happened in the Los Angeles area, the fires, and how does a community rebuild? Because that had all kinds of implications. Not only was it, people's lives were genuinely at stake, but many people lost their homes, their businesses, everything else. So they're looking at things that have tremendous impact. And so that report is always a really interesting read. What I find is so cool about it is it pulls us out of two different things that we can fall into as real estate professionals. One is, of course, being so focused on our markets, which we need to be. That is truly our area of mastery. But we need to sometimes really kind of look at things a little more globally because our clients are looking that way. Many of our clients don't just have their lives centered around, Massachusetts, parts of, New Hampshire and Rhode Island and everything else. They're really not just locally or regionally based. They're people who have holdings of all kinds all over the world. So that's one piece of it. But the other thing it does is it pulls us out of just the real estate element on the whole. So we're looking at truly what are the behaviors of that luxury clientele? What other kinds of investments do they have? How are they financing properties? Like all different kinds of things. So it's a really kind of a broader perspective, which is really helpful for our agents.
Yeah, I mean, it's called the luxury outlook. And I think it's so interesting, like a big part of something that you do day to day here in terms of like helping our agents with their goals. And a lot of them are to get to a higher average price point, right? And how do I get into these spheres? And I do believe that like if you're, and that's a great business, but like if your business is on the entry level, first time home buyer, hyper local, the larger trends do matter, but a little bit less. And I think that like with the luxury market, it really is by price point. And it's less location specific because there's only so many homes for 5, 10, 20 million in one town.
That's
right. And maybe more so in some towns, but that's going to be a market that's the $20 million market.
That's right.
Nationwide.
That's right.
Or at least throughout New England or whatever it might be. It's not the $20 million market in Weston, right? Because there's only so many of those.
That's
so
right.
Yes, they matter, but you need to really understand the full picture. And like you said, most people that are selling something, even if it's 3, 5, they're still paying attention to the trends, their portfolio, whatever it is. They've obviously done well and those things matter. So it is interesting because it's so hard to pull ourselves out of the day-to-day.
I know.
In the local market's the most important and imperative, I would say.
Of course, absolutely.
But I like how they do it. And I've always liked the report. So
well, and I think, when we take a look at the most successful agents within our organization or even just Sotheby's International Realty worldwide, many of them consider themselves to be global real estate advisors, right? It's not just about the holding or the home that they're helping somebody transact in this particular marketplace. It's really about the financial well-being of that person or that family and what they're trying to accomplish. So it's an excellent tool that fits within that kind of niche that we're in.
Yeah. So like one thing that they also touch on, obviously, in terms of trends, like we hear a lot about rates and some political topics like tariffs and things like that. And that has a national implication, obviously.
Sure.
Some of that is perception and some is more than that. So I guess, can you break that down, like what they're anticipating or how someone could use this to help a client, make these decisions?
Absolutely. So a big piece of what happens in any kind of geopolitical change, especially one that's financial, because this is, at the heart of it, we're talking about a transaction that people are making typically to move their families, but it's also a major financial transaction. For many of our clients, it represents the bulk of their wealth, right? So any kind of financial change on the geopolitical landscape can then affect how people feel about making an important decision at that time. And ultimately, as the news of the tariff environment was happening, the fact that there was going to be a shift in the trade relations, there was a lot of apprehension globally. And as a matter of fact, if you take a look at the real estate market on the whole in our marketplace, you saw a shift. And when we talked to our colleagues all over the country, they saw the same thing. April, May were both really difficult months. But what we did see, what was very interesting, is that smart money continued to move. Mm-hmm. And so that meant something to all of us. What that meant is that people who were paying for and getting excellent advice, they're getting expert advice from wealth managers or what have you, they were giving them some degree of confidence in making a move at that moment. And I think some people even had an opportunity as a result of that. Mm-hmm. So what was so fascinating to me is, as I'm hearing that from my colleagues who are in the wealth management field, and then as I'm talking to our agents who are serving the high-end client, they were both saying, stay the course. Don't make any rash decisions right now. It's a moment to hit pause or to just kind of settle in, but don't make any ultimately big changes as a result of what you're hearing in the headlines. And I think that was excellent advice, because what we saw was that the voice of reason, people who were able to remain calm in the midst of what appeared to be some kind of crisis, which truly had not been, but it was, perception is reality, that people who were able to remain calm in that time were able to get a lot more done. They were able to protect their assets and they were able to move forward. We've seen, and I saw it in the report, we've definitely seen that the luxury market has outperformed where we thought it would be, particularly given the kind of shifts and the kind of news cycles that we've seen.
Awesome. I love that. It's just worth looking through. I used to say, when I was doing the referrals, people would say, how does the Denver rental market impact me, right? I don't need to get into the nitty gritty, but the thing is if you have a moment to look through, just having those little nuggets of information in your head, that's what has you add value. I would use that all the time, right? When somebody would call in a specific market, be like, well, that's a little bit different, right? I think back then, what I remember from mm-hmm. Denver is it was more building centric. So it was you had to go right to the building. And it was good that I knew that. And they didn't need to know that, but you have these little bits of information. Mm-hmm. Now, when you're sitting with someone at a dinner party and they're like, my son or daughter just took a job in Colorado, And you could just offer this little bit of maybe something that doesn't even matter to them, but what you're telling them is I have an idea of what's happening on a national level. And I think that these reports, nobody has time to dig around and find this information all for themselves. So while we all feel like we barely have time to look at the report, I think that obviously that's why we really didn't summarize it on here, because the advice is go look at it.
Right.
Go take a peek, go have that stuff. It's going to store in your brain for a long time. Give it 3 to 6 months and I'm sure something will come up. But be that voice of reason, know what's going on across the board, and that luxury market really does matter.
Just gives you a snapshot and a different perspective. I
love
think that's
it.
always a healthy thing to have.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.